We're also heads down focused when we're building our companies, that we forget that there's other people out there like you and others who are like asking the same questions.
What is your advice today that you give when you speak to some of these newly accomplished sort of founders?
I think one is kind of get plugged into your community and recognize there's people, founders like you in your community that are asking the same questions you're asking, and you don't always have to come to the answer man or a mentor to find it. Like, be part of building a community around you. We're also heads down focused when we're building our companies, that we forget that there's other people out there like you and others who are like asking the same questions. So create that peer group. If it doesn't exist in your community yet, I would encourage you to be part of building it. And when I started my first company in '98, it's not like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos were giving back to the startup community, right? But I think there's a chance to be part of that community and invest in the community. And I'm much more of a community builder now than I was early in my career. And I think and there's some of that's about over mentoring, because it was so hard to find a mentor in '98 that knew, e-commerce, and, it's just like it was a different world.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a whole different set of different challenges that your first-time founders are going to face now, right? That I didn't have to face, right? And people are always like, people tend to be super critical of their startup ecosystem. Like, here's all of the deficiencies we have. In Seattle's like, we don't have a lot of early stage investors, and our startup ecosystem is really bad. And I'm like, oh my God, you should have been here in '98. Like, it's really good now. Like, we always look at Silicon Valley and say, why aren't we Silicon Valley? And the answer was, well, we didn't start in 1971, right? Yeah. So Bell just came out with a new book on startup communities. I encourage people you're going to be part of the community, whether you're building community or whether you're building your company. So be aware of that first and foremost, because you're going to find other people like you, and that's a huge support.
Yeah, support. Yeah, very super important. Yeah, I think that's key.
Mentors who actually have experience versus mentors who are trying to sell you something, right? So I tend to give a lot of time to folks, but I also am aware at some point, like, hey, you're abusing the circumstance, right? Comes a point where, and what I mean by that is if you're willing to go do the work, mentors are totally willing to support you. But if I ask you to go do something and you want to meet with me again, and I'm like, so what progress? Because I'm kind of weird. I actually remember what I asked, right? So did you go do that thing? And they're like, oh, no, it's hard. And I'm like, well, why are you asking to meet me again? Like, that's the thing you need to go do next.
Yeah.
Find out if the customer cares about your product. Like, go do 25 customer interviews and let's talk again.
Yeah.
But no, that was hard. So I want to meet with you again. Like, my opinion hasn't changed. So there's a small percentage of founders that are just kind of crazy, right? And we get a bad rap for that in the startup community, but there's also a bunch of founders who I think are out doing the work, and mentors we want to be there and help and support, but talk to people who have actually been there and done that versus consultants or, people who are like, want to, especially the fundraising for a fee folks, like, hey, I'll help you go fundraise and I'll introduce you to a bunch of angels and I want 6% of whatever we raise. Just say no to that. Like, run away. Those are we call those the leeches in the startup community, right? Yeah. They don't actually do anything. They don't sponsor anything. They show up at events that other people have sponsored, right? And are there to try to sell you something, and just run away from those folks. They're completely useless.
Usually they start bringing out big names as well, like, oh, I did this university, or anything they can leech onto. I agree. That's also happened to me, in previous startups.